Hello and welcome to Paradigm Playbook, a podcast for entrepreneurs in the business of sports. Your hosts, Dave Kozak and Steve Cook, are business owners, successful entrepreneurs, sports enthusiasts, avid readers, and longtime friends. For years, they've read every business book on the market and built successful companies with what they've learned. This podcast will give you the critical takeaways in just 15 minutes a week. It's a quick and easy playbook for building a winning sports business. And now, here are your hosts, Dave and Steve.
Know someone who could benefit from our business expertise? Send them our way. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Paradigm Playbook. I'm your host, Dave Kozak, alongside my co-host, Mr. Steve Cook.
Thank you, David. We're here with one of our Playmaker editions. And with us today is my good friend, Stephanie Savas. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, we're, I'll
hold on. She's got to hold that judgment until the end.
Yeah,
exactly.
We don't know if it's fun yet.
So
that might be premature.
The pre-show discussion was a lot of fun, but it always is. We'll see where we end up. But so Steph and I worked together for 10 years or a long time in corporate America. But what I want everyone to hear, and if you will take a few minutes and give us the Cliff Notes version of how you got from point A to point B, that's what we're interested in.
I'll try to make a long story very short. I was a competitive gymnast growing up. In high school, I quit the sport and started coaching as my side job. And I coached my way basically through college. I was in my junior year of college coaching for a local gymnastics club, and they opened a satellite facility. And I was running that satellite facility. And very quickly, the majority of the students from the main facility were wanting to transfer over to the much smaller, less equipped satellite facility. And at that point, I realized that this was something that I wanted to do. I kind of had a knack for it. And I put a business plan together to go open my own gymnastics school at age 20. I put the business plan together.
Wow.
Found an investor and went and opened up a facility while I was still in college in a local area about 30 minutes from where I was working previously. Did that for 18 years, went from a small facility and quickly grew out of it. 3 years later, opened and built from the ground up another facility 5 years into my venture. Was only there for 5 years before I outgrew that one as well. Went and built an even larger facility. And then from there, opened satellite facilities. And then after 18 years of doing that and growing the business, I was then a mom, had a son in kindergarten, first grade, and decided that it was kind of time to sell and move on to my next adventure. And I went from there to teaching at UCF. I taught fiscal and facility management and worked with the physical education department there at UCF, still very involved in sports. And then somewhere along the way, I ran into Steve Cook and ended up working at American Athletic. And
whoa, what a break.
Later, here I am still.
Well, thank you. Obviously an exciting and varied background. And so a lot of questions come up. The first question I have is, so all the times that you had to expand or move or rebuild, there's a new investment in there or a new loan, or there's a new something. So how hard was it for you to manage the benefit and risk involved in making that move?
Honestly, I was very, very blessed in my situation. The first one, I put a business plan together and I went to my father and asked for financial support to do the first one. Through that, getting involved in the community, being involved in Rotary and making connections within the community, met a real estate investor who believed so strongly in me that he owner financed my first building.
Wow.
And so through that owner financing, he helped me get into that first building. And then from there, when we outgrew that, helped get into the second building. So I was really, really blessed just to meet the right people. But I think that networking and being involved in the community and kind of building your tribe absolutely helps with that.
Yeah. So, and I will add, you are blessed that you met the right people. But meeting those people was not a blessing given. It was an action taken. So I talk about all the time the need for entrepreneurs to get the heck out of their business. And that's exactly why, because you don't know when you're going to need that person that you meet at the Rotary or at, Optimus or at the Chamber of Commerce or networking or whatever. So Dave and I are big believers in networking, and it's kind of how we've gotten there.
Yeah. And I think a point to make in that is lesson number one is network, period. If you're going to go into business, you got to network any way you shake it. Lesson number two in that is that you're in that networking and that opportunity wasn't presented by some other gymnastics company. It was presented by a completely random person in a different industry doing different things. And that connection in that network is what made the opportunity for the space. So it's not one of like, hey, just go network with the rest of the gymnastics world. No, it's network with people in business that are doing other things, because you never know when you need to lean into them.
Absolutely. And I think, especially back then, I mean, that was 25 years ago when I first started, the gymnastics industry was very immature. There weren't a lot of forward-thinking business owners in the gymnastics industry. It was a bunch of coaches who just loved coaching who wanted to open a business. So surrounding myself with people who were in other industries that were business-minded, they didn't have to know gymnastics, I think made it a big, big difference in my success.
Yeah, I think that as you have seen the gymnastics business mature, it hasn't necessarily matured at the rate of other businesses. So there are some very, very strong, very smart, key people in the world of gymnastics, but there's still a number of people that are very passionate about the sport, but haven't made that step to the next thing. And so my next question is transferring your passion for gymnastics in children to a passion for running and growing a business. That's kind of what we're all about here. That's what Paradigm Playbook is about, is trying to get people to transfer that passion for sport to a passion for business. Did that come natural to you?
I think, obviously, like most gymnastics owners, I started it because I was passionate about sport and gymnastics, but I'm a process type person. So right from the beginning, I was always thinking, okay, how can I make this better? How can I streamline operations? How can I put processes in place that are going to make this business grow? So I guess it kind of did come naturally to me, but at the same time, I was constantly seeking advice, and I was reading, and I was looking at other businesses and trying to find those little tidbits that I could make applicable to my own situation. So I guess maybe it did come easy, but what did come hard for me was eventually recognizing that in order to meet the goals of that business, I needed to step away from my original passion, which was coaching. And I think that you hear that a lot from gymnastics coaches is, I did this because I love to coach. I don't want to step out of that. And finding that balance was a challenge.
Yeah, we hear that a lot, and we reference a lot the book, The E-Myth. So we're all the time talking about people that, they're in a business and they think they can run it better than the guy who's running it. They're doing better. And as Michael Gerber says in that book, they go from working for an idiot to being the idiot and running and doing the same thing all over again. And what we're dealing with, a lot of our listeners, feel that pain right now because they're out there running a successful business, but they're still part of the technician side of that business where they're still coaching, and they don't want to give it up. And I went through that with the baseball academy as well. It's like, yeah, I don't want to give it up. And Dave was one that always says, when are you going to get smart and start working on the business? And it finally sunk in, and that's when I got there.
At what point in your expansion from, let's call it facility 1, 2, and 3, at what point did you really have to hang up the coaching? right? Because at some point you have to step away to manage a good business, right? You've got to be on point, or you have to hire someone that manages a business better than you, and then you can do that piece, but you're paying money for that.
Well, and that, I think that was a lot of it, was finding the right person that had my same values and wanted to carry on the coaching in the way that I wanted my program to be. Once I found that individual, it was a lot easier for me to take a step back. I still got my fix and would go into the gym and work with the athletes. But finding that key coach with the same thoughts as me was what made that a lot easier. And what I found too is I don't necessarily think now in retrospect that it was the gymnastics that I loved. It was the coaching that I loved. So when I transferred out of the coaching, I basically then just started coaching my staff. I would bring in these young kids, groom them, bring them up through the program, and help develop them into employees, help them build futures for themselves, be more forward thinking. So it was more of the coaching, not necessarily the sport of gymnastics.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I've been through that a little bit myself. As you get older, the disparity. When you were a coach and you were coaching children, you're 25 years old and you're coaching kids that are 13 to 15 or whatever. There's a disparity there, and then you're running a business and you're 35 and you're teaching people that are 25 how to run your business, and the disparity is the same. It's still that age differential is the same. You're still coaching that person. So here's a question. I asked this question because I know Steph pretty well, is that after you actually sold the business, and we're going to get into that in a minute, but after you sold the business and got away from it, when did you stop going in to check that it was still running your way? Have you?
Well, it actually just sold again. So the person that I sold it to 14 years ago just sold it 3 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
But probably over the 14 years that it was under that new ownership, I talked to those new owners at least once a quarter. And not because I was telling them how to do it, but just, it's your baby. You wanted to check in, and I was fortunate enough to have a good relationship with them and able to do that.
I want to ask a question about that for a minute, because I think we talk a lot about, and I know in my business, so I do financial planning, succession planning, business ownership, consulting, like the all of it. Did you create the opportunity to sell? Was it internal? Did you teach someone how to buy it? Did you structure it so you buy it, or was it a random person that came in and decided they wanted to buy it?
So when I sold it the first time, it was internal. Created that opportunity with an employee so that they were able to purchase it. Just now, as it sold, it was an external. So.
Okay.
But the internal sale, did you develop that? Was it you that came up with that idea, or did they come to you?
I think it was mutual. There had been discussions that it was time, and then they came to me with a proposal, and actually had been forward thinking enough that they went out and they found their money and their financing. I did not own or finance it.
Wow.
But set it up in a way that they could purchase it and transition easily.
Yeah, and one of the key points there, that no matter what business an entrepreneur's in, that conversation happens over a period of time. It's not like, hey, one day you go to your best employee, like, hey, it's time for you to buy it. No, you marinate it. Hey, would you be interested in owning a gym like this? And you're starting to have those conversations. Hey, you got to pay attention to this stuff if you ever want to be in charge someday. If you like, and you sort of the grooming process, and I don't like that word anymore because it's got such bad connotations, but the education process of small business owners, entrepreneurs, and employees is finding that person that you can teach, that is interested, that is motivated, that is there, and you'll know it as a business owner. It's the person that pays attention to you, person that's a reliable follower that has the vision and pathway, and they sort of they're paying attention to, and it's a mutual creation of opportunity in that succession plan.
Absolutely. And I think equally important in finding that right person is, as a business owner, thinking about your exit strategy and planning for that, and getting those processes in place so that your business is strong, and who you are selling it to, it's going to be an easy transition. And obviously, as a business owner, you want to be able to get top dollar. So I think far too often people just hit a point of burnout and say, I'm done, I want to sell. And that's typically the worst time to do it. They really need to be thinking long term and grooming the business, and getting it ready for that sale. And then when that right person comes along, it'll just kind of transition naturally.
Yeah, no, without question. How much time did you spend over the course of your sort of maturity as a business owner? We just got done an episode that we spoke about the finances of a business. And when you start a business, you have no idea about financials. You have no idea your bottom dollar costs, your overheads. How was that transition for you in mastering the financials, and then, relate it to the exit where you're going, hey, I know I'm getting a good price. I know I'm selling it to the right person. I know all those things because I understand this business model. How long did that process take, and what did you do to master it, other than by force and, you own it.
School of hard knocks.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you really don't know what you don't know, especially, like I said, I was 21 when I started. I was a physical education major, really, had taken a few accounting classes here and there, and school of hard knocks. Learn as you go, study, read, consult, find your tribe, find people who are smarter than you, and get advice from them. And it took probably the duration of 18 years that I did it. And even now, it's been 15 years since I sold. I wish I knew then what I know now. You just,
every time
a process.
So Steph is another one of my book buddies. She's a big reader. We share titles all the time. And so if you were giving advice to an entrepreneur of a good book to read, and you don't have to spend a lot of time making sure it's the best one, but what's one book that you would recommend?
It's Your Ship. I think that's high on my list these days, which was recommended to me by you. Great book.
Yeah. Great book. And it's the inside of that book is, it's your business. You better understand all of it and run it. And what Dave and I were just talking about, the financial side of it is too often neglected. So what we find now, and so for clarity, Steph currently is helping entrepreneurs that want to sell their business. So she consults with them, works with them, helps them sell their business. So she's aware of it. But and we don't sell businesses, but we do consult with them. But one of the things that we see is a lack of understanding of the numbers. If there's money in the checking account, good day. If there's not, bad day. So
cash flow is the number one killer of small businesses, in my opinion. And so many new business owners don't understand cash flow for exactly that reason. They look at their bank account and say, oh, I've got all this money, and don't recognize the fact that their bills are going to eat all that up next week, and they're going to be in the negative. So yeah,
Do you want your business to thrive? Visit us at paradigmplaybook.com and contact us today for expert assistance.
So how do you go about figuring out, how would you recommend they go about figuring out what their business is worth? What is their evaluation procedure? Are you bringing in a third-party valuation team, or how are you determining that?
Definitely bringing in a third-party valuation team. And those can be, there's business appraisers out there, there's business brokers, but definitely third party. Too often what I hear in the gymnastics world is, oh yeah, I talked to my friend that sold his business to his employee and he said it's worth this. Well, they don't know. It definitely needs to be an outside professional that has some statistics on their industry, especially to come in and do that valuation for them. And then one step further, take that valuation and get a consultant to look at it and say, you know what, this is your valuation now, but if you spend the next 12 to 18 months and do these 10 things, this is what your valuation could potentially look like then.
Yeah. And so I do some M&A deals in the financial space in the insurance world. And I've done several myself. And then I've also consulted others on it. One of the things that story I was telling earlier today about the
pest control
company was, he had a very good business, but he didn't understand any of it. And I said, and he wanted to grow through acquisition. And I said to him basically, like, if you don't understand really how to value your own company, right, then how do you walk into someone else's world and not have some targeted valuation, right? So I encourage every entrepreneur, try and figure it out yourself and come up with a number before you get the actual number from the appraiser, so you can see if you're off the mark and where were you off the mark and why are you off the mark. Because while, yeah, the consultants can help and the appraisers are going to give you a value that you can put out on the street, I think you have to temper your own sort of like, this is my blood, sweat, and tears. I think it's worth 17 million. And the appraiser comes in and says, it's 1.1. Like, that's the way it works,
Right.
But I think you can get to it. And, there's multiple ways to look at valuations. And I think that anybody that is, and I just completed it was a partner buyout with a construction company where one was buying out the other. And I did all of the financial legwork for them to say, this is what it's worth. You could argue that you should be at the highest of EBITDA or the highest of revenue, and you could argue that it should be at the lowest. But at the end of the day, you guys have a good structure. You've got processes and procedures in place that make your company valuable. You've got infrastructure where you can wash, rinse, and repeat the same tasks. So I said, it's a higher end organization than your lowest EBITDA value or whatever ranking value are. But if you're not doing that research along the path of entrepreneurship and not paying attention to the industry, like, you're missing the mark. That you are a coach, not a business owner at that point, right? This is the stuff that matters. Because again, I think if you're doing that exercise, Steph, and to your point, like, you're not selling out of despair, out of tiredness. You're selling out of a business thing. And that's a maturation process for a business owner to dig in like that.
It really is. And my advice to business owners is, once you get open and you get your feet underneath you, you need to start immediately thinking about your exit strategy. Even if it's not for 20 years that you think you want to exit, you should be thinking about that every step of the process as you build that business. And too many people just don't do that.
Well, and as I said, fortune favors a prepared mind, right? So you're thinking about it, and maybe it doesn't happen that way. Maybe some rich person walks in and loves it and wants it and pays you out, and you walk and sail off into the sunset. But if that doesn't happen, then what? Right. And what's plan A? What's desired plan A? What's plan B? Well, could I settle for this? And I'll ask you this question, Steph, because you went through it. Had your employee asked you to finance some of the deal, would you have done the deal?
Probably. A small portion of it. Yeah.
Like, that's what, and that's the business owner mentality that you have to have. Like, succession requires both parties to be in the game. And so, and I love the way you answer. It's like, no, I'm not financing the entirety of the deal, but certainly I trained you. I know you. I know your values, right? That is the idea of grooming your successor, right? And having that.
And that's the benefit to exactly that, to grooming your successor and having it be someone within your organization, because you know their strengths and you feel confident that they're going to be able to carry on with that business. Sometimes when it's an outside person, a stranger, they can sell you a bill of goods, but you don't really know until they're actually in there operating.
One of the things that we see frequently is that the owner has built the business around them so tightly that and they don't understand it and it's actually lost value because of the need for the original owner. One of the questions I ask, and when I go to meet with someone, tell me about your last 3-week vacation. And invariably they've never had one, so they don't know. So that 3-week 3-week vacation, the purpose is to prove that business can run without you. And if it does, then the value just went up. And so now, if you're only selling it to an inside person, that's great. It might give you the best warm and fuzzies, but not having an outside bidder reduces the price there.
Right.
So showing that the business can work without you, I think, is important. The other thing is, and this is a question, I don't see in the single venue sports business a large amount of duplication, someone opening a second facility or third or fourth. In the swim school industry, I see it frequently. There's a lot of chains of 20 to 100 facilities. In gymnastics, you can probably name all the places that own more than 4 locations, and there aren't many. So why do you think that is? Why is there is there ability to duplicate that business?
Absolutely, there's the ability to duplicate that business. I think we're seeing more of that in the gymnastics world. I think their eyes are on the swim schools, and people are catching on. I'm seeing more of it.
Okay.
But again, I think that the gymnastics industry was a little immature business-wise, and it's finally catching up to some of the others. But I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are on that. I mean, why do you think that is?
Well, I one of the things is I think the business goes too long before the owner pulls themselves away from the coaching. And I don't say you have to pull yourself totally out of it. And if you're not coaching, doesn't mean you can't still be connected to the student base. So, and I know that connection that a lot of club owners have, but I think they wait too long. You know, to this day, I've got friends that have owned clubs for over 30 years that are still coaching 40 hours a week. So I think that's a problem. What's your answer? Dave's got the answer to everything.
It's business management infrastructure all day, every day. Why are swim schools so successful? Because the first person that created the swim school did it from a business standpoint. Then he created the infrastructure to go franchise that opportunity and place one here, place one there, place one there, find the demographic research, put in the 20-yard pool or whatever it is, and call the mommy and me classes and rock and roll, teach kids how to swim. The idea behind expansion is it a scalable, repeatable process, right? And so if you run, with a pad and paper and you don't have the electronic infrastructure, the communication infrastructure, the billing and accounts receivable and payable infrastructure, you can't duplicate that because you are the person, you are the glue that binds all of that together. So when you talk about repeating what you did, it better be easy from a management standpoint to do the same thing over again. And I just think, like, your buddy, 30 years, great. He's good at one facility. Put 2 facilities, and what's happening? He's got to be at both places at the same time, unless you have that business management infrastructure in place. And I'm not talking about massive CRMs and things like that. I'm talking about things that anyone can do in your business to help you get the numbers, understand the facts of the business so that you can make decisions about the business, right?
So I mean, it's fairly recent that, outside companies have stepped in so that clubs can outsource their registration and their enrollment and their staffing, and now their employee motivation. Now there's apps and programs and companies that do all that. In the early days when Steph started her club, I don't think that was going on. So it was harder to develop processes. I don't disagree with the need, but I think it was harder back then.
If it was easy, everybody would do it, Steve, and everybody would be successful.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I'll go back to my first business. I didn't have a structured infrastructure. I had to build it from scratch. I had to think through it. And I'll tell you exactly what I did. I took a paper process. I documented it. I said, can I do this paper process with any type of automation, even an outsource? Okay. Can I make that process better, one step at a time? Okay. Can I add an email exchange to this? Can I do it in an automated fashion where things start going? And you just start building and bolting, and you're building something. And it's not easy. I'm not insinuating that, hey, I could just go open 50 gymnastics clubs, but I know where I would start.
Yeah, I'm not sure who where I got the quote, but it's simple, not easy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
I like that.
Yeah. So I think that's a big part of it. Any challenges throughout the, let's leave current position aside, challenges through the entrepreneurial maze?
Current position aside.
Yeah. We're not digging there. Although that could be another, Dave would love to hear that podcast. We may do that one, Steph.
I don't think we should do that. I mean, I think obviously there's always challenges. Again, for me, it was the school of hard knocks. So it was learning all the things that I thought I knew that I didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. But I really want to emphasize that I think the solution to that is getting out there and networking with people and going and looking for help. I think all too often business owners, it's a lonely road. If being a small business owner, if you aren't out there connecting with people and sharing ideas and being inspired. And I think early on in my business, that was, I networked, but I didn't go and reach out for help as much as I should have in the early first 2 to 5 years. And then that changed. And when I started doing that, it was like a switch flipped and all bets were off from there.
Yeah. And there's an ego piece of that. I lived it, right? I can do this as good as anyone.
Yeah.
Like I don't need their help. I got this. And that's the entrepreneurial seizure, right? Where then you become the idiot, and the few, and Steph, you being one of them, and I think the three of us on this call being one of them, is like we learned, hey, someone else has already had this problem. They've already had this struggle. Let me pick their brain and see how they dealt with it. And I used to go interdisciplinary. Like I would ask random business owners how they solved a problem. I remember I had a conversation with a person that owned an edible arrangements franchise. And I was talking about the reliability of drivers, and like I was talking about employee hiring and like how he does it. And he goes, his whole thing was, you have to know who you're hiring, and you have to meet them where they are, as far as like you can't force someone that is genuinely irresponsible to try and be responsible with time, right? And so it was the idea of just going out and talking to different people and knowing that someone else has had this exact same problem. And I'm not weak by asking the question and asking for help.
It goes back. Everything that we talk about on every podcast goes back to a book or 2 books or 10 books or whatever. But the one book that just comes to mind here is Mindset or Growth Mind. What was Carol
S. Dweck?
Yeah.
Mindset.
And it's about having a growth mindset. And that's, the 2 things that I know about Steph over all the years that we've worked together. One is she's hungry to learn, so she's willing to learn. And if you go into it thinking, hey, I can do this as good as anybody, you'll fail. If you go into it saying I can steal ideas from anybody, then you're going to grow. And the other thing is, and this is a direct benefit of what you do and what you're doing for children, is that you're a competitor. And so every one of these playmakers, when we ask them to tell us about, they go back to when they were an athlete. So, and Steph and I had this conversation yesterday. What sports does for children can't be replaced by anything else. And so I think a lot of Steph's success is that she likes to compete. She's willing to compete. She wants to win, sometimes viciously, but she wants to win. And so, I think that's it. It's growth mindset and be a competitor. And I think it helps.
Yeah. I mean, my favorite book in the world is Laws of Lifetime Growth by Catherine Demore, and the other one slipped my mind. Come on. Brian Tracy.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's another concept in there that I think wraps all this up, Steph, and what you did, which is lift while you climb. And so while you were climbing and learning, you were turning around and pulling the people with you and teaching them and continuing to do it. And I think as any good entrepreneur, you've got to spend 50% of your time educating your people and 50% of your time running the business and making sure that you've got jobs for those people that you're trying to educate along the way. And if you don't do that, it's a recipe for, you may have a business for, 10, 15, even 20 years, but you end up coaching 40 hours a week when you're 60 years old.
Okay, Steph, anything that you want to add before we wrap this up? Is there like words of wisdom that I haven't heard?
No, just find your tribe, find your mentors. Like you just said, you're coaching up people, but you've always got to find those people that are going to coach you up. No matter where you are in your career, how successful you are, you've got to find those people that continue to challenge you and coach you up.
And those that have been through it like Steph are the most available for mentoring. The people that have struggled and succeeded, almost without exception, love giving back, so that they are available. So Steph, is there if someone wants to contact you, is there a preferred way? Are you on social media? Is there a way that people could connect with you?
They can reach out to me via LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, any of those. I would love to just sit and talk with anybody who would like to talk about anything, business, anything. I love conversations and challenging myself.
Steph has a few other expertise. She can talk surfing. She can talk nautical. She talk wine very well. So Steph has a lot of
ocean
knowledge points.
Anything to do with the ocean, I would love a conversation on that as well.
Hey, and if you're looking to buy or sell a gymnastics club, I'm sure she'd be willing to talk about
she'll
that
help
too.
You. Yeah,
absolutely be willing to help with that.
Very good, Steph. Thank you very much. This was fun, and I pray we'll do it again, and maybe we'll dig into the corporate world, but maybe not.
Maybe not.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, everybody. That's Paradigm Playbook's Playmaker episode. If you enjoyed this, please like and share and subscribe.
And connect with Stephanie Savas. Thanks, Steph.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Visit ParadigmPlaybook.com to discover how we can support you and your business.